Tinseltown. Wow. I did not think I was going to get emotional on a podcast. That's not true. I did think I was going to get emotional. I just didn't think it was going to be before I had even introduced the first one. My name is Mandy May Cheetham, and welcome to Going Gray in Tinseltown. I just finished listening to the theme song that I wrote for this show, and that's what's got me all riled up. I created that song in that way because I wanted to find some way to interpret what this experience is like of no longer dyeing my hair and what all those voices sound like on top of each other inside my head. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you feel inspired at the end of it, as I do now. And I'm really excited to take this journey with all of you, and very excited for myself to come out the other side brighter, happier, more confident, and free. I thought I would begin by reading an article that I wrote for Medium about this journey, so you could have a little bit of a context to understand why I made the decision to go gray in a town that definitely does not support women with gray hair being in front of the camera. 75% of women dye their hair in America. The other 25% are infants. I wish I were kidding. Okay, it's closer to 20% infants. 18.5% of women in America are aged 0 to 14, but do some math and that leaves only 6% of women over 14 who are not dyeing their hair. I mean, of course this is true. It doesn't mean they dye it every month, of course, and this study was done by Clairol in 2008, so let's keep that in mind. And plenty of women do it for fun and not to cover gray, but I think it's safe to say that we all know 1, 2, or 377 secretly gray-haired ladies. So why do we dye? I recently came to the decision that I would stop dyeing my hair, which is currently red, and allow my natural color to grow in, which I think is dark brown with at least 50 to 60% white. I've been thinking about it for years, and I don't know what put me over the edge. Maybe the nausea I feel every time I smell the dye, the thousands I have spent on color. I was spending $200 a month for several years until I finally just started getting the professional tubes online and mixing them at home myself. Or the deep sadness I felt every time I considered the me that I have not allowed to be seen. The me who is aging. The me who's 43. I spent the holidays at my mom's home in a small town in rural Ontario where I could wear toques and pajamas pretty much everywhere, slap on some lipstick, and look like an eccentric up from the city for some R&R. 3 weeks at her place and a semi-permanent 2 weeks before I left, and I had a pretty significant amount of growth by the time I hit the tarmac back in LA in mid-January. I kept telling myself I would dye it when I got back here. Go to the fancy Melrose salon and pay $300 for the assistant of my hair guru to accidentally use the scalp-burning, remove a layer of skin every time peroxide color instead of the non-allergenic kind. But as each merciful day of not dying passed, something was happening. I was spending less and less time aggressively pawing and gawking at my roots every time I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and humming and hawing about how much longer I could go before I'd have to pull out the chemicals, and more time considering the big what if. This was the longest amount of time I had ever spent without covering my roots. I was starting to see shocks of white hair against my skin that brightened my eyes and that looked, dare I say it, beautiful. I'm sure no one would blame me if I had sent my Uber straight from LAX to the salon or even question why I dye. I'm an actress. I live in LA. I look younger than I am. At times that feels like my only power here. That last line was meant as a joke, one of those jokes that's funny because it's true. I did not know I was submerged in a quicksand of fear over the possibility that physical signs of aging would overtake what little power I thought I had until I made the decision to go gray. I went into panic mode, frantically trying to figure out how I would A, continue to have a career in Hollywood, one which, let's be honest, has been moving in reverse since I hit 40, and B, continue to trap men into dating me without my fantasy-invoking red waterfall and a white beacon of infertility above my brow. The protestations came fast and furious. You won't work, you won't date, people will know you will soon be infertile, you will look old. old. There's that word. The one that made me cringe every time I saw my gray hairline peeking through during the weeks when I knew we didn't have to leave the house, trying to give my scalp a break from the burning, flaking, and peeling. Looking at myself with sad eyes as I denied any knowledge of how deep I am into the progression of my life. If I faced the gray, I'd have to face everything that went with it. The dark circles starting to puff, the neck wrinkles, drooping breasts, having hit 30 and then 40 and maybe even hitting 50 without the house, the man, the career, the Louboutins, Louboutins, whatever the fuck they're called. If I just kept covering it up, I wouldn't have to face the failure. I wouldn't have to admit that there was supposed to be more. I was supposed to be more. So I died and died it. But I digress. For 13 years, I've been dying away the gray. It was fun at first, particularly when I went red about 10 years ago. With those first red-tinged highlights, I walked out of the salon and a man on the street said, "Wow, a redhead." I had never had any stranger comment specifically on my hair like that before. I felt uneasy because he was slightly lecherous, but I flicked my head around and thanked him nonetheless. Power. For years after that, I was known for my red hair. The compliments were frequent and plenty. The color went progressively from a strawberry blonde to a "hey, look at me, motherfucker, I'm not dead yet" red. Headshots, videos, films, TV shows, performances, and Uber profile photos all screamed my identity. I am redhead, mysterious, cunning, sexy, charming, willful, passionate, and my scalp is flaking off in chunks as the glorious red tendrils rapidly thin and recede, each hair making its escape from further rounds of torture by parachuting off my head any chance she gets. Oh yes, the hair thinning may have had something to do with it. 43 seems a little young to be losing it. Pun intended. I have my suspicions that the dyeing has something to do with it. Hair dye has been a known allergen since the late 1800s, and several oft-quieted or dismissed studies have shown higher rates of cancers in women who dye their hair and the sweet colorists who enable them. Side note, in the EU, despite the banning of PPD, or paraphenylalanidyamine, as a carcinogenic substance, is still allowed to comprise up to 6% of hair dye. Most of the studies I've seen have been related to breast cancer, but one I just read today also cited increased incidence of cervical and vulvar cancers. Vulvar. Wow, I gotta put that in a rap song. Of course, cancer is the big, scary word used as the final blow in any chemical discussion, and perhaps having only 6% of the chemicals of hair dyes capable of causing cancer is a small amount when you consider how much other shit is in there, trying to make it soft and shiny, but also perhaps not. Any woman who sat in a hairdresser's chair and had the goop applied to her head and felt the heat it gives off, sometimes for days, while it processes, has, I'm sure, had the thought that it may not be healthy, but it's much better than looking old, right? But it can't be. If hair dye were really that bad for us, we would know, right? All of the governing bodies set out to protect us from big bad beauty and big bad pharma would not have anything other than our best interests at heart. Surely some university would cough up millions of dollars to do extensive trials on patent-protected products responsible for an expected $6.5 billion in sales in 2019, which is a tiny amount considering the overall hair care market is worth $211 billion. That's about 325 million tubes of color. I'm sure that keeps a few folks in their Louboutins. So, my thesis is that my insistence on poisoning myself has to do with my previously unexplored belief that gray hair means I am old. If I am old, I am invisible, unviable, and my time for dreaming and achieving is over. Does gray equal old? One statistic I found said that 32% of British women under 30 are starting to go gray. Or is it a sign of something else? Are the very products we are using killing the hair we're trying to festoon, causing us to dive deeper into the pool of self-hatred connected to aging? If women are going gray earlier, is gray even an indicator of age? I don't think so. And I believe that this is the narrative that needs to be changed. I also know that I can't expect anyone else to change that narrative for me until I change it for myself. I'm only into the first week of leaving the house with my skunk streaks showing along the hairline, no matter where I part it, and I've no straight answer as to how it's going. I just know there's a lot to unpack in the exploration of my relationship to aging, and the glaring indicator of such on my head. I felt equal parts superhero and complete self-sabotaging maniac, trying to take it one day at a time because the thought of letting go of the red hair that has defined me is too much to do all at once. So will this journey end with me having a new sense of self, a new identity that's not based in any way on how I look? Or will it end with me just replacing it with a new identity as woman with gray hair, championing the change in the entertainment industry? I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm not going to diet today. Thank you for listening to the first episode of Going Gray in Tinseltown. Please like, subscribe, and share this so that we can get the word out and help to change the narrative around aging, not just in Hollywood, but everywhere. You can also follow us on Instagram, and by us I mean me, at Manda Murhead, MANDAMURHEAD. There you'll see my meltdowns as they occur pretty frequently while I'm going through this process. Honestly, though, I would love to hear about your stories. I want to know what's going on with you, and I think that the more we talk about it, the easier it will get for all of us. Thanks so much. Stay gray.